So I got up at 5 a.m. for sunrise and completely clear skies. I did watch it from my tent, which is really nice. It's kind of nice sometimes not having to get up and shoot when it's not good light. Sometimes when it's like 5 a.m. and the light looks really good, and you just have to force yourself up to shoot. The first 10 minutes until you get in the flow of shooting are tough. But I think my game plan for today is to move locations. I really want to stay in this location and shoot again, but it looks like for the next day there's not going to be any chance of good conditions. It's going to be warm and clear skies. I was just checking the weather here. Let's see. Tomorrow it looks like there's a chance of rain in the evening, and the cloud cover is going to be around 30%. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack up, and it's about 3 days hike back to my vehicle from here. I need to be back to the vehicle in 3 days, so I need to get at least 1 day of hiking today because I'll run out of food if I don't get back in time. And I'm going to try to get into a good spot by tomorrow night when that weather rolls in. So I'm going to utilize these 2 full days of clear skies and get some good backpacking in and try to get back into a distance where I can hike 15 or 20 miles out to my vehicle the last day and still get some good shooting tomorrow. So get packed up, get on the trail. I think I'm gonna have to bivvy tonight because there are no camp spots anywhere up here. See if I can find somewhere to put my sleeping bag down and just call it good. This is what I was trying to time when I was over there and it was all clear skies for a few days. I saw that there was going to be some storms or potential rainfall over here. It was still only 10% when I checked it earlier. But anytime there's cloud cover rolling through quick like that, it can be really good light. Because you can see back here, that horizon's semi-clear. So hopefully when the sun drops down from there to there, it'll shoot up and hit all the sky above in this area. All right, so the light's starting to get pretty good, and I picked out a composition that I've been working on for a little bit. I was standing over there where I'm gonna bivvy at first, and then I just started moving this way because I was trying to get these trees rolling through here, matching the left-hand edge of the composition. So I'm gonna crop this kind of in here and have this glow coming in the sides. I think the sun's gonna drop down below those clouds and really light up all this back here. Some nice light rays going off through there. This is one of those sunsets where it could be a complete dud, but it's pretty good light right now, so I'm gonna start shooting, even though sunset's another 20 minutes away. So what I'm gonna do for this shot is I'm gonna go a little wider than the actual composition that I think I'm gonna end up with, because when I was looking at it, I was trying to balance the peak with these trees in the foreground, so it kind of offsets a little bit off to the center. And then all this nice light down here in the foreground kind of just leads the eyes into the peak. And the light will balance this side just coming in the edge there. Oh man. What a night. So for this shot, I'm going to take my first focal point at hyperfocal right here on that high contrast tree line. I'm going to take an exposure for the highlights and then for the darks. And then I'm going to take another shot that's refocused right down here in the immediate foreground, because it's really important that I have all that nice detail where the light hits the edge there in perfect focus. So when I take that one, I'll refocus down there so it's nice and sharp. So first thing here, go single point spot focus, zoom in at 100%, and back button autofocus. Alright, so that's sharp. So now what I like to do first is always expose for the sky, especially if the light's good like it is now. It's getting pretty crazy across there. So I'm going to watch my histogram, Woo. I'm going to push it right up to the edge. I'm just exposing for the highlights here. I'll fire one off there. Oh man, wow. I'm going to darken that exposure just a little bit to ensure that I captured that red detail, because with a sunset like this, it's not going to hurt. Alright, so now I got the exposure for the highlights, midtones, which is overboard, and now I'm going to take one more exposure for everything except that highlight area, so all this light hitting up in here. So something right in there, moving that dark spike, which all these trees, into the dark midtones, and then that other spike, which is the mountain and all the lower ridge lines, to the midtones. That range might get some pretty good light. It's poking through like I thought. All this is starting to get hit. Alright, second exposure, that was for the highlights. Let me make sure this is in focus. Oh man, that's nice light. Wow. Nice and sharp there. So one of those sunsets I gotta keep calm and keep thinking about what I'm trying to do, because it gets overwhelming because the light's so good. So now I'm gonna bring this focus box down to the foreground, and I'm just gonna capture the focus point for right here. And that's gonna ensure I have this nice light coming in from the side, really sharp, bringing the eyes down into the center of the composition. So I'll focus there, back button autofocus. Go F11 here, and I'm gonna go really bright with this because it's only for this bottom exposure. Fire another one off. Wow. Some of the best light I've ever seen. I'll check this exposure. Make sure that's sharp just in that bottom foreground. So now I have 3 shots that I can blend together, and I think they're gonna be really good shots. So I wanted to give you guys a few tips for editing complex images, such as the one you just saw me capture out in the field. So here is the edited image. I'm about 90% done with this one. All of the exposure blending is done, and it actually became quite complex, but I only have a few things left to do. I have to even out the color across the scene and the light. So I'm going to take some of this color and kind of propagate it over in this area so it matches. It won't be quite as bright, but it should be close to the same color. I also need to work on the lighting down here in the center ground. I think the foreground ended up looking pretty good. So let's jump into the tips for editing photos like this. But before we do, if you guys are enjoying this video and you want to help me to reach and teach more photographers, giving the video a thumbs up is a huge help. It's completely free, and it lets the YouTube algorithm know that you found this video to be helpful, so it will recommend it to other photographers. If you really like my videos, you can also click the subscribe button and then the bell next to the subscribe button, and then you'll get a notification every time it comes out. So whenever I'm capturing an image like this out in the field that requires multiple exposures and has very dynamic scene, meaning multiple parts of the scene are moving or changing very rapidly, I like to break it down into sections of the image, and then it doesn't feel so overwhelming. So I knew that the sky and this part of the image up here was changing very quickly, and I knew that if I only captured one shot of it, then it would probably change and I would probably miss out on a future shot where the light got even better. So whenever the sky is changing very rapidly, I'll grab a focal point that will ensure that my horizon down to the midground is in focus. Now, if I can capture the whole thing with one focal point, that's great. But for this one, I knew that I wanted sharp focus in the foreground as well. And the depth of field was so large that I knew I would need 2 different focus points. So the first focus point I took was right here, and that ensured that I was sharp from this area, probably right around in here, all the way back to the peak. So whenever I did that, I knew that the sky would constantly change. So I exposed for the highlights using the expose to the right technique, and then I took multiple exposures, exact same settings as the light changed. And then when I got back home, I had all these different exposures to choose from, and this is the one that I like the best for the sky. It turned out really well.
So that's one tip you can use, because then you don't just have one sky exposure and then you're just hoping for the best with it. The other thing I knew was that so long as the light was peeking through over here, I would be getting good light down here in the foreground. So I wasn't as worried about capturing this exposure down here as I was with the sky. So I weighted the sky exposure as more important, and I worked on that first, knowing that if I had some light peeking through here, I could capture this foreground exposure later. If I would have gone in reverse and say worked on the foreground exposure first, I would have missed this light up here in the sky. So you kind of have to learn to weight within your mind the shot selection, and that can be very hard at first because this is somewhat complex. So I probably took 6 different exposures for the sky up here, and then once that light started to die up in the sky, but I still had some light coming through over here, I refocused right down here because I knew that this exposure would capture this whole area all the way to the immediate foreground. And then I took 2 or 3 different shots there. Number 1, because I knew the lighting would be slightly different as the sun dropped lower and lower in the sky. And number 2, by taking 3 shots, if one of them was not perfect focus, I knew one of the others would be. So it's kind of just laying all these fail safes for myself to ensure I could capture it. So when I got back from the shoot, I had 6 different images that I used for this image, all of the same composition, and then I blended them together in Photoshop. And like I said earlier, this is about 90% of the way done, but all the exposure blending's done. I just need to balance the light through here, and I'm going to add or saturate a little bit more color over here so it somewhat matches this. So hopefully that helped you guys out. The hardest part of this is the photo editing aspect, and within my landscape photography school, which is an online platform that I built with the goal of teaching everyone everything I know all about photography, I actually edit images like this on the regular and teach the step-by-step techniques. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up for my email list, and I open enrollment to that maybe every 3 to 6 months. And you can sign up then if it looks like something that would really help you out. When you sign up for my email list, I also have a bunch of other free stuff that you get, such as my camera technique shooting guides. So you can download these and take them out in the field with you. But for now, let's jump back to the shooting technique.
So the light that was going on during that first shot that I recorded was actually the best light the whole time on the peak. But I've been shooting some cropped in stuff back in here. After that last recording, this completely lost light, so I'm really lucky that I started shooting it when I did. Then I've been cropped back in here too. That's still getting some nice color. Show that composition right here on the screen. So I have boxed in, so I have this dark ridge line kind of bracing the bottom left, and then on the top right I kind of have the mountain offset so they're diagonal. And then I'm going to use all the lighting coming in the side to break up the dark to light to dark transition between all these ridge lines. And I'll probably use some light painting, meaning using a colored brush in Photoshop to really accentuate where that light kind of separates through there. Should be a pretty cool shot. Fire it off here. I'm going to shoot at f16, so I just take one focal point. Should give me a nice long exposure. But clear skies all week, and then I made that 20-mile push, hoping and wishing that it would just go down. And it's always hard to tell, but I'm really glad I came up here. This is one of those trips that I saw some awesome stuff, but I was starting to get bummed out because what initially it turned out to be perfect stretch of weather dissipated in the middle of the trip and turned to clear skies. And the last location I was at, right under that peak, would have just been perfect tonight, but I am out of food, so I had to come back this way. But I really like that shot I got earlier, this peak, and I think I'll really like some of this stuff down in there. Can't complain. Alright, so that is the exposure for the darks. That'll help me to bring out, with really nice color and detail, all this dark detail down there. So I overexposed that area. Now I'll take one for the highlights. So I'm shooting an f/25. Can't really use the histogram at this time of night because it won't read it. f/16, 25 seconds. So I'm going to go down to 15 seconds. That should expose for that nice glow. But I'm hoping that these clouds will stick around, and for sunrise this could be ridiculous because the sun's coming up behind me and it'll be hitting all these peaks right through here, and it should be getting all that stuff too. So I'm gonna get up. Sorry, I keep swinging the camera. I'm gonna get up at let's see, 4:30 and start watching and go from there. But I like how this one turned out. It looks really good. I think I'll be able to really bring out all this color back here. It's kind of still painting the face of that peak in the far distance. All right, that's a wrap for tonight. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the morning. So that lasted about an hour after I laid down and started getting hit with rain, and then wind started blowing through really hard, and there was some lightning off in the distance. So I checked the satellites again, still the same weather, and then I texted back to my buddy Iron, who's at home right now, and he said there was lightning strikes over where he lives, but he checked over here and it doesn't look like it's gonna get too bad. So I quickly kind of made a makeshift tent falling off the side of this ledge, and I'm just going to sit it through the night and we'll see what happens. And if I hear anything really crazy, I might be exiting, but I think it'll be all good. So sunrise in the morning, 6 hours.